Hello, everyone. This is Annie.
And this is Gail.
You're listening to Heroes
And Zeros.
a true crime podcast.
That's right.
Aren't you glad she's back?
I know. So, Annie,
Hi. I'm so glad to have you back.
I know.
Or it's good, and I'm glad.
It is so good to be back. I
It's
have
glad.
to tell you. It really got me excited today. So, Annie, tell me something. When I'm not here, do you just use a recording of us of, hey, this is Annie, this is Gail, or do you just go, this is Annie?
I just say, hey, this is Annie.
Here.
Sorry, Gail's having fun somewhere else.
You guys, do you even listen to your own fucking podcast? No.
Not very often. I might listen to a part of it.
Yeah, I try.
And then I'm like, okay, I can't do it.
Yeah, it embarrasses me.
Me too.
But I got to tell you, so
Yeah.
The other night, I communicated with somebody in Canada. And,
Of course, my favorite.
And they left a voice message, and I was listening to it, and it was so funny because they talked about the podcast, and I go, oh my God, you listen. So to all our listeners, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Cassie. Thank you so much, Cassie. for
Cassie,
listening.
you're a rock
I
star.
know, she
Thanks.
is a rock star. She once wrote me one of the kindest, nicest letters I've ever received in my life.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Cassie, that sounds like you're kind of like an awesome person.
Yeah, I think she is. So she, anyway, says, and I was like confused at first because as I many am when people start talking about an episode, because I'm like thinking, oh, do you really expect me to remember them? Even my own? So she goes, and it was so funny because Annie totally butchered that name. You got it, da-da-da-da. Okanawa.
Oh, yes, yes,
Okanawa.
I did butcher it. Oh my God, I could not get
She
it.
goes, we were all laughing and dying laughing, and you know
Oh.
how funny it was, but you got it right. And I was like, and then it hit me. I still don't know the case, but it made me laugh because I do remember you going, and me finally looking at you like, you mean Okanawa?
Because it was so obvious when you said it. Oh, duh. That is how you say it.
Anyway, so it is great to be back, and
Yay.
it's great to know that our listeners, in fact,
Are listening.
I know. And Jeremy, shout out to you too, because he's always like, do you have a podcast up? Like, he's the one who notifies us when we don't have
Yes,
one up
yes.
yet. And so thanks for listening to Jeremy, even though when I asked him, I go, that makes me feel so good. He goes, well, I'm somewhere where I listen to podcasts all day, so yours is one of them.
Aw.
No.
But not, you're not.
It's not that special, Gail.
Yeah. Well, I had something kind of cool happen the other night.
Okay, what?
Brian and I went out with another couple, went out for dinner, and then we made reservations, and we had to go get drinks beforehand because we thought we could just get in there. It was packed. So we went over there, and this...
Is this local?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm just not going to name the places or whatever. But we went in, and this one lady kept looking at me, and then she said something that was like...
But you didn't recognize her?
No, I didn't know her. And she said something like, oh, you're the ones that tried to hit me with a Suburban. And I'm
What?
like, us? And then I was like, we didn't drive a Suburban. And I didn't even drive whatever vehicle we were driving. And she laughed and she goes, I'm just kidding. And I'm thinking, okay, that's kind of funny. I don't know what would make you say that. And then I noticed that Ken kept looking at me. And then...
So they mistaked you for somebody who they thought maybe
and then
was driving a Suburban and, had to swerve.
Then a group of them sat down at the table next to us. And I noticed they kept looking over. And then the person I was with, the lady they said, Annie and podcast. And I'm like, she goes, you're so famous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Oh my God, Annie, you just made my day.
So because one of our best fans, Tiffany Falloon, shout out, she was working the bar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. So maybe she mentioned it or something. I don't know. But... Anyway, it made my little heart warm.
I love that.
And they must be one of the 44 listeners we have.
I thought it was 54, so we're losing, so we got to get back. But no, anyway.
So that was
cool.
pretty cool. It kind of lifted me up all weekend.
Your voice? Could they have recognized your voice, maybe?
I don't know.
And that's when you said, oh, I didn't hit you with my Suburban. All of a sudden somebody goes, like, wait a minute, I know that voice.
Maybe. That would be even cooler.
I know, right?
Yeah.
They didn't say my name, eh?
You weren't with me.
Like,
if you were sitting with me, they go, that's Gail too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. That is the way it's...
Well, hopefully that was really what they were talking about.
But
Not
that's
like,
awesome.
hey, that Annie drives crazy and she almost hit me one day.
Here's the deal, though. Remember what I said? All publicity is good publicity.
That's true.
So when we got the hate mail, now people are recognizing you when out and about at dinner. This is big shit, folks.
Granted, it was a town about the size of 1,200.
Nobody needs to know that.
But hey, actually, I really don't know, but it seems pretty small.
I love it. Well,
Me
that
too.
is awesome. That is awesome.
So,
and anything else happening? It's cold here in Iowa.
Nope.
But you know what? It's not too bad today.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be bad, and the next day, I think like single digits, like 1 or 10, and then below 0 overnight. That sucks.
Do you notice anything different about me?
You have pink glasses on.
No, I'm tan. Aren't I tan?
Oh, I was going to say that earlier. You're always tan.
No, we just got back from Mexico, so that's why Annie was alone for a while.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was Christmas. It's just been crazy. Hey, here's the other thing, though. Have you said this on the podcast when you're reading the book?
Probably not by myself.
The author of the book.
Oh, no, I didn't say anything.
Oh, let's talk about that. So the author of the book that Annie's been reading the true crime stories out of.
And creepy and ghost stories is H.J. Tidy. And he messaged.
And what's the book called?
Well, I don't have them all with me. There's one that's H.J. Tidy's, ghost stories, true crime stories, creepy stories.
And the author is H.J.
Tidy.
So H.J. Tidy reached out to you.
Yes, he messaged me and just said he loved the podcast and he wanted to know if he could mention us and give the link on his Instagram stories. And then said, great job, et cetera, et cetera. So it made me happy that the actual artist and author of that was happy enough, was satisfied, was happy with how his things that he wrote was narrated.
I love it. Way to go, Annie. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that made my
I am so impressed at the work you've done while I've done nothing.
You're tan and you've been having fun and relaxing someplace. I think that makes you the smarter one.
I don't know about
instead of staying where it's below 0.
Yeah, I do agree with you there.
But today we have a gnarly case.
Do we?
We do.
And is it a current? Is it a past affair?
It's a past case. It wasn't that long ago, I believe, that things were kind of wrapped up, but trigger warning, it's a brutal case and it involves rape, child abuse, murder.
The usual Annie subjects.
Yeah.
Which just is but here's the deal though. It's good awareness and it's good listening.
And you got to remember these victims and things that people have gone through. You don't want to know everything you can about that serial killer or whatever, even though sometimes it can be super fascinating for just the bizarrety of why someone would do something like that. But these victims, their life was cut short, and who's going to remember them if we don't talk about them?
That's right. And so on this Heroes to Zeros episode,
there are some heroes and quite a few zeros.
Really? Quite a few zeros?
Well, there's at least 3 I know of.
All right. Well, Annie, take it away.
Okay. Well, this is about Fred and Rose West. They're from England. So
nice.
This couple is about as close to evil as you're going to get.
Not so nice.
Not so nice. So here's a little intro.
Okay.
As soon as the police had dug up the first human remains in the backyard of Gloucester, number 25 Cromwell Street, in February 1994, bookmakers all over the country started to take bets on how many bodies would eventually be found there. But nobody would guess just what was going to unfold. Of course, murders are terrible, but none come any more gruesome than those that took place on 25 Cromwell Street.
And this was in Gloucester?
Gloucester, England.
And that's in England, yeah, so that's the town's name. Wow.
I had to look it up how you say it because it looks like it's spelled like it would be pronounced Gloucester.
Yeah.
Gloucester.
It's actually a very major city, I think.
Yeah. So the first zero, what?
It's always scary when you start with people taking bets on how many bodies. So.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I know it. His name, the first zero, is Frederick Walter Stephen West. He was born in September on the 29th in 1941.
Frederick? Okay.
And he just went by Fred. Yeah, Fred West. But he had 2 middle names, Frederick Walter Stephen West. And so it's a mouthful, just call him Fred. And he came from a family of farm workers. His parents were Walter and Daisy, and the family resided in Much Markle. I guess that's how it's pronounced.
Much Markle. Okay.
Much Markle. He was the second of six children, and supposedly his mother's favorite.
Oh,
yeah.
How do you know you're your favorite?
Well, by Fred's own account, which hasn't been confirmed. Okay, his family, and then it was just as fucked up as
most of ours.
It ends up doing. Oh no, baby, you have no idea.
Like there's degrees of fucked up.
Yeah, okay. This is like the nth degree, the infinity and beyond, whatever. Blah. So it hasn't been confirmed, but Fred's own account, sexual abuse of various kinds, was common in the household. He claimed his own father, Walter, had sex with his daughters, which is Fred's sisters, and then taught Fred how he should have sex with animals, mostly sheep.
Ew.
Yeah.
I honestly
That's
just
a whole
can't believe.
degree.
I just honestly can't believe people actually do that.
I know. Yeah. So another horrific.
Shout out to Bobby Pugh.
Who the F is that?
One of my best friends.
Oh, is he a sheep owner, farmer?
Well, it's a funny story.
Okay.
That's a long time ago.
A lot of immature high schoolers, right.
Nothing happened with sheep. But that is really...
Gross.
That is a degree of fucked up that's more than my average family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another horrific aspect of Fred's life is he would watch his father rape and abuse young girls. So it's just like this.
So not only from the family, but others too.
Right.
Like.
Then at the age of 12, his mom, Fred's mom, Daisy, instigated sex with him.
Oh my golly! Who are these
so
people?
So it's one
and
thing.
How did I just am so fascinated. I shouldn't be fascinated, but the fact is how do you
get there?
How does a husband meet a lady who both are going to be pedophiles?
Right. Exactly.
Or did you teach each other? And they do say you seek out alike.
Mm-hmm. And well, that is a perfect point that's going to be brought up later.
Okay.
And you're going to go, what? How? What are the chances?
That once again, Gail's called it again. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, she did. So just remember that none of these claims that Fred, claimed that he engaged in incest and one of his sisters was even impregnated by the father. None of these were confirmed, but these are by writers and interviewers and reporters, and then, yeah.
So he's always claimed innocent.
Right.
Okay. So Fred in England has, so all this craziness has gone on with his family.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but regardless, they say Fred and his mom were really close. They're just kind of tight. Okay.
Well, that's a weird closeness.
Yeah, very. Some say he seemed like any other young boy growing up, with his aunt eventually telling the press that he has, quote, he's always been such a nice boy, unquote. One neighbor described him as, I think this is kind of funny, little quote, a bit cheeky, a bit mouthy, but that was the way these kids were. Okay? Because, you don't really know these people. If you're just going to see him on the street, see him kicking a ball in the front yard, and how could you guess that something like that is going on in their home?
Again, be kind. Everyone you meet is going through something,
mm-hmm.
and what looks like great on the outside,
mm-hmm.
like a cross-stitch pattern on the back, is pretty fucked up.
Pretty messy.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Good job. I remember hearing something like that at a Bible study one time, where under everybody here on earth, this looks like chaos and just confusion, and just things are just a disgusting mess, when from God's perspective, he's looking down and he's looking at the
helpers, the good people.
No, the top side of the quilt that's beautiful.
Yes.
And underneath, we're just looking at the chaos and grossness. So.
Quilt.
So it's just like what you said, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But apparently, Fred showed that he had skill in woodworking and art, I guess. But he failed most of his other classes.
I find this very interesting because, Annie, you had a story not long ago where a guy was big into art and woodworking. So, mm-hmm. Interesting. So, let's put into our category, if we had a big whiteboard, of what makes a serial killer: woodworking,
being artsy.
And being artsy.
And
so far, several of you are really in trouble, aren't you now?
And head trauma. I got to add that one because I don't want to get classified as that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're artsy.
So I'm told. But, since I said Fred didn't do very well in school, his mom, to punish him, would show up at his classroom and yell at his teachers. And because they weren't doing their job.
What year was this? How long ago was this, Annie? Just by approximate. You don't have to scroll through a bit.
He was born in 41, and I think he 51.
So this is in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, it's late 50s.
Okay, so at the end of the day, life was much different. And his mom, I hate putting it like they put it from what I've read, but she was unattractive. She was very frumpy, and she wouldn't dress very nice. And so she would show up at the school because she knew it embarrassed him, and then she would yell at the teachers in front of him and the other classmates that they're not doing their job. She just liked to. I think she was just mean. I mean, but here's the deal. That's what's freaky, is she was probably one of the pioneers of this entitlement, no offense, right, of yelling at your teachers, when back in the day, everybody smacked their kid for acting up versus yell at the teacher. Nowadays, parents more apt to yell at the teacher than smack their kid.
Yeah, that's very true. And it is surprising.
She was in a weird way a trendsetter. Not of a good trend, but at the end of the day. But it
is weird that she didn't show up at school to embarrass him by yelling at him. She yelled at his teachers. But, okay, he quit school when he was like 15 and was still able to get a job as a farmhand, but the guy couldn't read and write. So that part's very sad.
And you know what? I don't think his mom was intelligent either, because if you really think about it, looking frumpy and yelling at people is really just an embarrassment about yourself. So, I mean.
And when he was 16, they said his looks slightly improved and he became more attractive to girls.
Well, most people do kind of blossom a little.
A little bit. And I say just a little bit. But he must have been somewhat charming because he was able to attract and have females around him a lot.
Again, it goes back to, this is another story you had, that this same thing happened. And I say, there's a big talk. I know you don't listen to a lot of pop culture, but right now Kim Kardashian is dating Pete Davidson, which Pete is a comedian and writer on Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
He is like the size of my frickin' pinky.
Okay.
And not that attractive.
All right.
And everybody's like, and before him, he dated another model and another famous person.
So he's just
why are all these girls attracted to this guy? And
clever,
they simply say that he's funny. He's funny. He's kind. He's outgoing. And when I think about when I fell in love with Greg, he's funny. And when I'm having the most fun with him is because he's being fun and funny.
Yeah. That's true.
But girls are attracted to personality, not necessarily
their looks. That is a good point, people. Remember, be nice and be funny.
But here's the thing. You can have great people like Pete Davidson, which I assume is great. Who do I know? Or you can have also really freaky people that like also attract somebody. So at 16, he started getting all these girls around him.
Yep, he started getting a little better looking at 16. And then at 17, this is in 1958 now, he was in a motorcycle accident that put him in a coma for a week.
Oh, whoa.
And so there are two stories here about what happened in this crash. West had reportedly been traveling down a hill on his motorbike and missed the turning, smashing straight into a brick wall.
Whoa.
His helmet split in two, damaging his head. This sounds like Bobby Joe Long, if you remember my very first case. And this is a reporter. His name is Mr. Sounds, Sounes. I presume it's how it's pronounced. He says, the story was Fred was rushed to the hospital, critically injured. He lay there unconscious for 7 days. When he finally woke up, he said it was like coming back from the dead. Now, the second account is from the same reporter because he had two theories. Because he reported on the serial killers, these two people, Fred and Rose West. He was reporting on them at the time. And so he did a little investigating. And he said he spoke to Fred and Rose West's eldest son, Stephen, in an attempt to uncover why Fred became a murderer. Like he was just as fascinated with why.
Years later.
This is years later, but this is about what happened currently.
And Rose is his mom?
Fred is...
When he gets married,
Fred
his
and
wife
Rose
must be
is
his
Rose,
wife.
yes.
Okay. We just haven't heard he got married yet.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead.
So this reporter, Mr. Sounds, uncovered another version of the same story after visiting the crime scene of the crash, or the scene of the crash, and noticed that the road did not fit Stephen's description of events. The reporter said, this is what I think happened. On the evening of November 21st, 1958, 17-year-old Fred was riding home along a country road in Muchmarkle. He was a few hundred yards from Moor Court Cottage, where he lived with his parents. At that moment, a young girl called Pat Mans was riding her bicycle home in the opposite direction. Somehow, Fred ran into her. In a mission to uncover the truth, Mr. Sounds had questioned local people about the sequence of events that night. He was told various stories about what happened, but some said Fred rode right into her deliberately. When Mr. Sounds tried to contact Ms. Mans, she refused to speak to him.
Oh.
So, either way,
he had a horrible
one is
accident.
worse than the other, but he had a major head trauma.
Yeah, but he already was screwed up abusing children prior to this, so we know...
He was being abused at this point.
Oh, he hadn't yet abused his sisters or anything?
No, his father had abused.
I thought, though, he taught him when he was like 11 to abuse his sisters.
He was showing him. It doesn't
Okay.
say if he actually had sex with his sisters.
But he's already
you could presume that he
led
had.
down this
Either way,
path of
this guy started out as a poor kid with fucked up parents, then became more fucked up because he was taught how to do it, and then he had a motorcycle accident which damaged the frontal lobe of his brain.
So down the path of perversion, really,
Yeah.
he was leading. And then, by the way, I am just going to take a second, remind all our listeners, because we're motorcycle riders. There's a lot of us out there. Please stop, look twice, and we will too. And
Good
don't blow
idea.
your freaking grass out into the street, please.
Oh,
It makes us slip and fall. And
good
so,
point.
Please keep your grass off the
Off the street. I never thought about that. So, Fred West.
So anyway, go back
How do
to
we
our
segue back into
story.
that, huh?
Back to our story. So Fred is in a coma for 7 days.
Yep, he was. And when he got out, he was still walking with a limp because, and he walked with a limp, I think, for forever.
The rest of his life. So then he really
And
becomes the scary movie.
Because one of his legs was shorter than the other.
Kung kung.
Yeah.
Kung kung.
So his appearance...
Kung
You should see her face. She's very serious. So his nose was crooked. His face was scarred. He has a limp. And the family says that it changed his mood dramatically, and he became super short-tempered. So,
well, part of that frontal lobe, that'll happen.
Yep.
And
No impulse control, short fuse. But apparently it didn't stop Fred from going back to his old haunt, hanging around nearby Ledbury, I guess, trying to pick up girls. So his appearance and his short leg and his whatever.
Poor guy.
Yep.
I mean, in that way.
And,
Anytime that you've had an accident and you can't be the same.
Because obviously sex is a huge part of the family dynamic growing up. So,
well, yeah. I was about to say, it was a big part of my 20s and 30s.
Thank God it wasn't.
Sorry, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, it wasn't from your parents forcing you to have sex with them.
Oh, no shit.
God dang. Regardless of what the true story was regarding the crash, the facts are Fred West became a different person afterwards, and he had a hair-trigger temper and violent outbursts of anger. And the crash led him to having a metal plate put in his head, and it broke one of his legs, like I said earlier, and it was always permanently shorter than the other, so he walked with a little limp. And, that would have to... When I've had knee damage or injuries before and walking with the limp, I do feel more vulnerable.
Oh, yeah.
There's something about that.
Anytime you're sick.
Like you don't appear strong.
Yeah, you don't feel strong.
Yeah.
So you're not fighting, you're not running on all cylinders.
So, as we said, not running on all cylinders, his behavior after the accident was erratic and he got into trouble left and right. Petty crimes and whatever. He became, whatever else he did, he became very well known to police. They knew his name, they knew his face.
Okay.
In 1960, so 2 years after the accident, Fred hurt his head again. When, guess what he did? He stuck his hand up a young girl's skirt, I believe she was 13, and this little badass girl pushed him down the flight of stairs that was on the fire escape.
Good for her.
I know. So obviously he hit his head again. So...
What a creep.
I know. In 1961, now he's 19, he was accused of molesting and impregnating a 13-year-old girl who was a family friend of the Wests. Can you imagine? You invite the Wests over every other weekend. You play cards and hang out. I can't imagine they had friends, but apparently they did. And then your 13-year-old daughter, who's probably in 6th, 7th grade, gets pregnant and raped and pregnant.
Here's the shitty thing is I do think this happens more than people realize because there are predators everywhere, and we really have to be careful, and we let our guard down because they're neighbors, they're nice guys, they're friends.
But then the victims don't want to say anything because they feel guilty.
It's part of talking to your kids early on about always knowing that, you know, their bodies are theirs. To share anything.
They have the right to say no.
Right.
So the girl's family obviously was furious, as they should have been, and they told Fred, you know what, dude, you are no longer invited into our house. You're not allowed into our house, and they pressed charges.
Good.
Yay. So at the trial for the rape of this young girl, it was claimed that Fred suffered from quote-unquote fits as a result of his head trauma. So he ended up being convicted only of child molestation, and he didn't do any jail time. It's like saying, oh, you know what? He had a bad crash, which he did, and he had head trauma, and so he has these outbursts. So he basically can't control it. So just let him go.
So you have an outburst that raped someone?
Exactly. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
You can't. That's
So that's 61. Afterwards, he was sent.
1961. Okay.
Afterwards, he was sent to live.
Makes sense. Sorry.
Afterwards, he was sent to live with his sister and was practically disowned by the rest of his family. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Well, good. But at least he doesn't have to live with that family.
But even though his family, what does his family have to judge him on?
Exactly. I know, right? I was thinking the same thing. But so then Fred got a job in construction, but was fired for stealing from his workplace and having sex with minors. You can't get away from it. 1962. Fred was 21. His family let him back into their lives. Can you hear that?
I know, I can hear the
It's my little Sachi.
That's okay. Little Sachi wanted to just say hi to our listeners. By the way, we'll post
a
couple pictures of her. You should see how big she is.
Oh, she's beautiful. So,
Sorry, go ahead. So go back.
1962,
sure. He turns 21. He's already been in trouble for petty theft and all this stuff.
And his family had kicked him out. So in 62, they let him back into to their lives. Moved back home to Muchmarkle. And then this is where he met up with an ex-girlfriend, Catherine or Rena Costello. Rena Costello, she's some girl that he used to be a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship with. She was from Scotland, but at the time she was making a living as a petty thief and a sex worker.
Oh.
So Rena and Fred kind of met
those
up.
Went together.
Pretty much. I bet they did. What is that? Oh, sorry, people.
Got a little phone on, you know.
So, sorry about that. But Rena and Fred met up, and she was at the time pregnant from another man, like a client, and they think he was Pakistani. She was like really close to giving birth. Like I think she was 7-8 months pregnant.
Okay.
And then Fred and Rena got married November 1962. 2 months after they had only like kind of re-met up for 2 months, and then they got married. And then they moved to Scotland.
So she was very pregnant when they got married and met up again. Okay.
So Fred and Rena got married, then they moved to Scotland, and Rena's daughter was born in March of 1963, and they named her Charmaine. And so, you know, Charmaine's not Fred's or anything, but to explain, apparently they needed to explain why the baby was of mixed race, Fred had Rena write to her parents and say that her baby had died at childbirth. So they adopted another little girl together and named her Charmaine.
But it's really her
is her daughter.
It's and the
and
gentleman.
So it's Fred's stepdaughter.
Yeah. Interesting that, well, you know, people didn't accept mixed races, though. So I do find that so fascinating.
That even, it's the whole thing is just stupid and sick and racism, and this whole case is pretty disgusting.
Right. Okay.
So Fred had demanded sex from Rena, like daily, constantly. But of course, it wasn't normal sex. Nope. He wasn't interested in that. There's no details, thank God. We don't need to go into it. You can just presume it was not good.
I don't even know. That's how vanilla I am. I don't even know what not normal sex is.
Me neither. I don't know either. But
all right,
this is where you guys have to use your imagination.
Should be going, oh, you fucking liar, Gail.
I believe you. In July of 1964, then the couple, Fred and Rena, had a child of their own, and they named her Anne Marie. It was also at this time that they met and became good friends with a young lady named Anna McFall.
Okay.
And Fred and Rena started having a rocky marriage because I think he was stepping out on her. He had a wandering eye. He was cheating on her.
Well, and he also had fits of anger and outbursts and all of that. So they now have 2 little girls, and they've met this girl named Anna.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think Rena and Anna became good friends.
Okay.
And Fred started working as an ice cream truck driver.
Oh, God, help us.
Yes, and that job gave him plenty of access to available young teenagers.
Right, and children.
Yep. So their life in Scotland came to an end when Fred accidentally, and I've also read maybe purposefully, why would you do that, ran over a 4-year-old little boy with his ice cream van. The courts found him to be... I know. Though the accident was found not to be his fault, Fred moved with his family, as well as Issa McNeil, which is a nanny that they had hired to take care of their children. Because, they have 2.
And on top of it, because the ice cream truck business is so fucking lucrative.
Right?
If you can afford a nanny.
They had a nanny almost the whole time. So, starting back over, the accident was found not to be his fault, but still, they wanted to get out of that area. So Fred moved with Issa McNeil, their nanny, Anna McFall, their friend, and Rena. They moved to Gloucester, where he got a job at a slaughterhouse. And they think, according to some researchers, this profession may have catalyzed his morbid obsession with death, mutilation, and dismemberment.
Okay, so first of all, shout out to Julie, who was our nanny back in the day. Love you, Julie. But as far as that slaughterhouse, okay, so I just want to remind everybody, if you have someone in your family that has had a head trauma and they decide to apply at a slaughterhouse, pull back.
Yeah. Tell them the job has been filled. Yeah, my opinion is he already had a morbid fascination with it, and it just kind of fed him to be working at that slaughterhouse because he was messed up. So Gloucester, in case anybody doesn't know, it's a small cathedral city of about 100,000 people. Oh, we said earlier it was one of their major cities. Okay. I think it is, but still it was considered small.
Well,
yeah. For those that live in Iowa, it is equivalent to the city of Davenport.
Okay.
Yeah. When the marriage of Rena and Fred it finally collapsed, Rena went back to Scotland alone. Yep, she left her daughters with Fred. But she came back in 1966, so was that like a couple years later, because she missed her daughters, only to discover that Fred had started a relationship with her friend Anna McFall, who was still living with him, in a caravan, and the 2 girls. So Fred, Anna, and the 2 little girls, Charmaine and Anne-Marie, were all living in this caravan. Isn't a caravan like a camper?
Yeah. No, okay. What about the nanny, too? I mean, think about this.
And Issa.
It's a lot of people in a car,
on top of one another, yeah. In July of 1967, McFall became pregnant with Fred's child.
This is Anna.
Okay. This is, Anna McFall, the friend.
Yeah.
She became pregnant, and she would pressure Fred to divorce Rena so that she could marry him. Well, he didn't like the pressure she was putting on him.
Well, it's such a great life living in the van.
I know, right? And why would you want to marry him? But anyway, he got pissed and he killed her. And
what? Anna?
He killed the mother of his child, one of his children.
Rena? Not Anna.
Anna McFall, the person that became friends with her. Okay. He just killed her, dismembered her, and buried her somewhere near the caravan park.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my God.
He cut off her fingers and toes, which ends up becoming a signature mutilation in the future.
I pray to gosh that this mutilation happened after death and not prior.
It's after.
Okay, so then I don't know what the joy is of cutting off fingers and toes.
Don't know.
I mean, I would assume as sadistic would be seeing it while he's alive, but...
I presume it had something to do with the slaughterhouse, being able to just chop something off, because obviously I think they were buried with the fingers and toes, so it's not like it was for fingerprint issues.
Right.
I don't think he was that smart. So, Rena Costello then moved into the caravan with Fred and her children, but then after a few months, she left Fred again and left the children with him.
And so
she just couldn't put up with him.
This is a new girl, right?
This is his wife still, Rena.
Oh, Rena. Okay.
Yep. So, but Fred is suspected to have killed again in January.
Hey, have you also noticed that these serial killers, these zero people, often have a lot of shit sex-wise going on and girl-wise and like a lot of drama.
A lot of drama.
Okay, so go ahead.
Because they're just weird.
Yeah.
But they're meeting these women that want to be with him. that are just about as weird.
Like.
Yeah. So Fred is suspected to have killed again in January of 1968 when 15-year-old Mary Bastholm disappeared from a bus stop. Mm-hmm.
And why do they suspect him?
There were only circumstantial evidence to link him to the crime, and they never did convict him for that one because they didn't find her body.
Okay.
I believe that's usually the reason. After the death of his mother, Daisy, pervert that she was, in February 1968, Fred started committing a lot of petty theft crimes, and he changed jobs a lot.
You mean more petty theft crime?
More petty
theft. He already
theft.
was doing it.
He started committing, at that time, more than he normally had been doing.
Okay.
So whatever, the death of his mom kind of triggered something in him. And it was during a stint as a bakery truck driver.
Just so y'all know, you can't keep using all these excuses. I had a problem with my head. My family was fucked up. Then I got my head fucked up. And now my mom died. And so at some point, buck up and take responsibility. But again, we're talking about...
Just so we know,
really
I wasn't
people.
Giving him an excuse.
Oh, I know.
I was just explaining what happened, what triggered something, or what happened during that time.
I know.
All right.
But he probably is thinking that this is why he can do it and get away with it.
I don't know. Who wants to get in his head, huh? So, it was during a stint as a bakery truck driver that he met his future wife and accomplice, Rosemary Rose, is what she goes by, Rose Letts. You might be wondering, how is this man getting so many women to fall at his feet? What's the appeal? So, from writer Theodore Dalrymple in the magazine The Horror Story, I have this because I thought he just worded it so well. There was something distinctly odd about the murderer's appearance. He looked like an intermediate stage in the transformation of man into werewolf. Extremely hirsute, which I had to look up, means hairy. Mm-hmm. He was short and had a limp from an early motorbike accident. He had the traditional bad teeth of an English working class, but his eyes glittered brightly, and there was no doubt that despite his poor education, bucolic accent, which means someone from the country or rural areas, he had a limited vocabulary, but was able to exert a hypnotic charm over his susceptible, inexperienced young women. Now we're going to learn a little bit about his future accomplice, Rose Letts. Wow, did you hear that? Rose. That was really deep. Excuse me, sorry. So Rosemary, or Rose Letts, she was the fifth of 7 children. She was born in North Devon, England, on November 29th, 1953.
And she and him had 2 children together.
You're going to find out, baby. Oh. He'd already had...
2 with Anna.
He had 1 with Anna McFall that he killed. So the baby died too. He had a stepdaughter, Charmaine, which was his first wife's daughter from another man. And then he had Anne Marie. So you were very close in name. Anne Marie. It is confusing, so at some point I will give you all the lists of their kids.
This is why it's good for me to ask questions, because I'm sure our listeners are also
wondering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so go ahead.
So Rose was the 5th child, and her parents had 7. She was born 1953. Her mom had a difficult pregnancy because she was suffering from severe depression. So they did the ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, the shock treatments, on the mom
while she was pregnant.
2 days before Rose was born.
Who the hell can't wait 2 days?
This treatment had extreme effects on their patients. It induced seizures so severe that patients would break their teeth, bite through their tongues, and even broke their own bones.
Ah!
Daisy's final treatment was just Daisy. Her mom's name was Daisy also? Mm-hmm. Did I say that? I don't know, people, but I said Daisy.
The mom, but anyway, Anna's
Rose's
mom. Rose?
Rose's mom.
Fuck me, Rose's mom.
No, I'm so sorry. She had severe depression, so she had the shock treatments. And this stage is often the most sophisticated part of brain development, the few days before the child is born, that the doctor said your baby will have neurological development that's going to be stunted, and it might be retarded. The parts that give us a conscience, that give us empathy, and stop us from doing heinous acts is a part of the brain that Rose Letts' brain suffered from the shock treatments while she was in the womb. They believe that this treatment most likely caused a prenatal injury that contributed to Rose's poor grades in school and her bouts of aggression growing up. Just like Fred's, her household was troubled and abusive. Her father, Bill, was a paranoid schizophrenic who constantly disciplined her siblings, and her mother, Daisy.
Like finds like.
Growing up, Rosemary, of course, was sexually abused by her father. He was the dictator in a terrifying household. She had a weight problem in adolescence and was often teased at school and bullied, and she responded by attacking her bullies aggressively. When she was a teenager, she started becoming more sexually active and was even caught getting into bed with one of her younger brothers and sexually fondling him.
Ew!
Yeah.
I'm just so disgusted with people.
I know. And I'm not an expert, but haven't we all heard and learned that when kids at a young age are sexually molested, not even maybe raped, but molested, which is horrible enough, become more sexually active in a twisted way?
Oh, absolutely.
At a young age.
It's a combination of the sexual the sexual molestation, but also research finds a lot of times they didn't have a close relationship with the dad.
With the father.
Or
Yep.
the dad was out of the picture from divorce, so even though they were great love, they weren't in the household.
Right.
Which is a big daily thing that they find that girls who are cuddled and loved by their dad on a daily basis, not just weekly or Wednesday nights or whatever, on that daily basis, have less sexual activity.
Right. They're not
teens.
seeking anything else.
Exactly. They don't need to seek approval and love.
Yep.
They have it at home.
We're not professionals or psychiatrists or psychologists, but hey, we've been around. So we read and
we
we
like
listen.
that, and I like to pretend.
Just all y'all. Oh no, that's a statement.
Oh yeah, probably some kind of legal statement.
Yeah, there you go.
We know nothing.
And we don't pretend to. Because her father's rules prevented Rose from dating boys her own age, okay, she pursued relationships with older men. What? He was okay with that. He was okay with his little girl having relationships with old men, but not boys her own age. Twisted, that's a whole new episode, I think. The father that is truly concerned, I think, for his daughter would have a problem with her dating older men. But another example, or that is just another example of what kind of a sick fuck he was that she grew up in. That's just one facet. Now, there's also apparently an older man was living with them. He took advantage of Rose one night and raped her. From criminologist and author Dr. Jane Carter Woodrow, Dad Bill, who was forced to retire from the Navy because of his wife's illness, had psychotic episodes and constantly beat his children and his wife. Obsessed with cleanliness, he ran his home like a military boot camp and made his children scrub the carpet with toothbrushes.
Whoa.
They were not allowed to play with others on the estate, and Daisy would be beaten for chatting to neighbors. Neighbor Gail Job, her name is spelled Gill or Jill, maybe they pronounce it Jill.
Okay.
We'll just say Jill. Neighbor Jill Job tells the program, which must have been a paper at the time, you could hear the screams and the banging and shouting. It was awful to hear. But Jane says she found a way to manipulate her father and escape beatings.
And again, for our listeners, back then, you just didn't call when you hear these things in your neighbors.
Yeah, you were supposed to mind your own business. Don't get involved. Her ways were quite winsome, she says, and she made her father laugh so he would let her off from the beatings.
See, humor not only wins you women, but wins you...
the affection of your father or the lack of beatings.
Right. Makes people forget what they should be mad at you about.
She was nicknamed Dozy Rosie because she was behind at school and behind her brothers and sisters, I guess. At school, Rose was put in the corner and wearing a dunce cap.
Oh, back then, yeah.
Bill, Rose's father, began grooming her from a young age. Rosie was the vulnerable one who wasn't going to say anything when he began to sexually abuse her. After puberty hit, Rose began to use violence to get her own way at school. She lashed out at smaller children and kind of became a bully herself. She had always felt out of control, but now she had control over others. She felt powerful. She got more and more aggressive and more violent. When Rose was 15, when Rose was 15, her mom finally had had enough of her husband's abuse, and she took Rose and she moved in with one of her adult daughters and her husband.
A little late.
But she got her out, so she was, 15?
A little late.
Yeah. You would think it would have helped, but it really didn't. Rose started spending even more time with male companions, hanging out with guys, because now she doesn't have her father telling her who she can hang out with and who she can't. Later, the same year, 1969, Rose, don't know why, moved from North Devon back to Cheltenham. That's how it... Cheltenham. I think it typoed and it replaced the G with an H with a G. So I think it's Cheltenham to live with her father.
Any of my bad-teethed English friends, let me know.
Bad teeth. Bad tooth. For whatever reason, 1969, Rose moved back in with her dad.
Okay.
What? Why? Whatever.
Again, because they've also shown this Stockholm syndrome, right? Of this is who loves me, this is who knows me, and it just
and she would get daily attention, whether bad or good.
Yep.
While she was at a bus stop, Rose, who was now 16, met 28-year-old Fred West.
I wondered, Fred had to have been older because he's already been
12 years older than her.
And married other women. I figured he must have been older.
She's 16. He is now 28.
Okay.
And he sat next to her at a bus stop, and they found out that, like, at the bus stop they met. They got on the bus, they sat next to one another, and they had a lot in common. They thought that they must have talked about their abusive background, their home life, their dad, their moms.
Which is so odd, because for our listeners, don't you agree that when I first meet somebody and I think I have a lot in common, it's because we both liked motorcycles and the same kind of music, and
not because
going in the beach versus the skiing or whatever it is, snow skiing. Those are what I think about. Oh, look how much we have in common. Not
that.
Right. Who's getting into that deep of a conversation?
It gets even deeper. Apparently, Fred revealed his love of bondage and sadomasochism.
What the fudge on the very first... Okay, now it sounds like we're back in... Now we've sped up to 2022, and and there is Bumble and Tinder and all the other apps where people are very honest with what they want.
Exactly. And this was just face-to-face.
Wow.
Face-to-face Instagram.
Okay.
And apparently Rose wasn't fazed a bit. At the time, Fred was already a killer, having murdered his 18-year-old mistress, Anna McFall, and their unborn baby only 3 years before.
But never got caught for it.
No. According to Jane Woodall, the reporter, and any other girl would have run off, says Jane, but Rose didn't, because it was a normal thing for her. During this time, she and Fred, who was 12 years older than her, started dating. The chance meeting with Fred, who also came from an abusive and incestuous background, was a tragic fluke. What are the chances that they would meet up? That those two people, I mean, he'd already been a murderer once now, but the fact that they would get together,
again, I believe it's some kind of weird thing that like meets like.
Rose and Fred were the worst possible combination. Fred was obsessed with sex and death and would have continued to kill, I have no doubt, says Jane. Rose had the potential to be violent, but I don't know if she would have become a serial killer if she hadn't met him.
Oh, he brought her into the zero
she
life.
Had recently,
well, she was already a zero.
Yeah. She had recently moved to the area, so it's unlucky that these two people, as extreme as they were, should meet. It was the perfect storm, unquote, from Jane Woodall. All right, we're back. And continuing on with Rose and Fred, Rose's father, he strongly objected to her seeing Fred, and even went to the trailer park where Fred lived with his two daughters, I believe Fred and Charmaine and Anne-Marie, when they say two daughters, and he threatened him. He resorted.
But Anne-Marie's already killed.
No, not yet.
No,
that's Anna McFall, the nanny. Sorry, I know there's so many similar names. And so Bill, Rose's dad, threatened him at the trailer park, and he said he was going to contact social services, and he was threatening Wes directly, physically, and you have to leave my daughter alone, whatever. But no matter what he did, the threats didn't stop them from being together. This couple ended up having a shitload of children. So I'm going to give you a chronological list of them right here. Okay, we're back, and we have it all figured out. Charmaine was his stepdaughter.
Yep.
That Rena had given birth to, and the father was a Pakistani man.
Yep.
And then during their marriage, they had a child of their own, Rena and Fred, Anne-Marie.
Okay.
And then Heather was born, and that Heather is their first child of Fred and Rose, who is the serial killer couple.
Okay, so
yes,
he's got Charmaine,
Anne-Marie,
stepdaughter. He's got Anne-Marie, and now he starts with Heather.
Heather, which is Rose's and Fred's first child together.
Okay.
Then they have May, Then they have Stephen.
Stephen.
Then Louise.
Louise.
And then Barry.
Barry.
Then Rosemary Jr.
Rosemary Jr.
And then Luciana is their last child.
Luciana. Now, that's just an odd, all of a sudden, weird name out of the blue.
They like the name Anne and Anna and whatever.
And many of these, we know some are with him and some are of other men.
Yeah. So about 2 months after Heather was born, which is their first child, Fred and Rose's. Thank you to Gail for pointing out, and I knew something was funky because I felt it in my head.
It's funky.
Fred was jailed for petty theft. And at the time, Rose was 17 years old, and she was stuck at home, left to look after the 3 children. And she used violent outbursts. She had violent outbursts, and she used the violent rule of thumb as taking care of disciplining your children that she learned from her father. And it is the pressure of caring for these 3 children while she was still a child herself.
2 aren't hers.
Was a trigger for Rose's violent, erotic tendencies. This woman was the original wicked stepmother. She treated her stepdaughters, which were 2 of them, terribly. The girls were tied to the bed and whipped. On one occasion, a neighbor came into the house to see Charmaine standing on a chair, naked, with her arms tied with a belt, and Rose attacking her with a rolling pin.
What the fuck?
In 1971, in a letter from Rose to Fred while he was incarcerated, "Darling, about Char," Rosemary wrote, "I think she likes to be handled rough. But darling, why do I have to be the one to do it? I would keep her for her own sake if it wasn't for the rest of the children. The rest of the children at that stage were Charmaine and Anne-Marie." So it's not like she had a whole house full of children she just couldn't handle. She was a piece of work. Shortly before Fred's release in June...
And here's the deal, though. The more you do something, the more you do it. So when you're out of control and you continually let yourself
be out of control,
it's a cycle. It just keeps going
second
and going
nature.
and going. Yep.
Shortly before Fred was released in June 1971, Rose murdered Charmaine.
Whoa!
It's believed that she did so during one of her violent outbursts. And then Fred got out of jail, and he came home, and he buried her under the kitchen floor.
How does, under the kitchen floor? That's even grosser.
Because, they didn't really have a basement like a...
Yeah, I get that, but maybe go out to the woods or something.
When his first wife, Rena Costello, began asking questions about, hey, I miss Charmaine, I want to see her, where's she at? Apparently, Rena came back looking for her daughters, wanted to see Charmaine. Fred strangled Rena and buried her in a nearby field.
I find it interesting that so far it sounds like nobody even notices anybody's gone or they don't get in trouble for any of this shit.
Ironically, you say that when you do. When Charmaine was no longer seen coming to school, the teachers and her friends, one of whom had witnessed Mrs. West beating her severely with a wooden spoon while her wrists were tied behind her back with a leather belt, were told that she'd been taken away by her real mother. No further efforts to trace Charmaine were ever made. To everyone, she was a child that had simply vanished without a trace.
Wow. Poor Charmaine.
And as if you figured out, this is going to be a 2-parter. So we're going to go just a little bit further, because what he does eventually later, what they both do, it's just shocking. And I think we've had enough shock to last us a lifetime right now. But Fred was thought to then have moved the body again, meaning Charmaine,
from under the kitchen?
From under the kitchen by cutting off her fingers and toes, as he did with Anna McFall, his first victim. And then he buried her under the kitchen floor again at a different home at 25 Midland Road, Gloucester. No idea. It wasn't planned that they would live at 25, the number 25 at their 2 residences.
Whose home is this?
They moved to 25 Midland Road, Gloucester at some point. Fred and Rose were secretly married in Gloucester on January 29th in 1972, and then their second daughter, May, was born in June of that same year. With a growing family, they moved from Midland Road to Cromwell Street, 25 Cromwell Street, which was large enough, I guess it was a bigger home, to enable them to take in lodgers to assist with rent. Fred would encourage Rosemary, so they got married. They kind of got married secretly. Fred encouraged Rosemary to have sex with other men.
Well, we know that. They had a bunch of children, including some from other men.
Both for money and for fun, because he would drill peepholes into walls and doors so that he could watch. It's so sick. He took photos of it, posted them in swinger magazines and as ads for prostitution because he wanted some money. But I think more than money, he just liked the sickness of it. In June of 1972, they had another daughter together, Mae West. Did I already say that?
Well, you've told us about their children
and
the names, but no. So now they've had Mae.
Oh, yes, I did. I said in January of 72, they got married. And then Mae was born that June. So, anyway, back up. Rosemary continued working as a prostitute from their home in a room, as I said, fitted with peepholes for Fred to use. And they would take a red light outside of the room, I suppose on the hallway door or beside the door, to let the children know they should not enter.
It's the red light district.
Over the following years, she gave birth to 7 more children, of which 5 were fathered by Fred and 3 by her clients from prostitution. It is also thought that maybe one of these kids was conceived by Rose's own father, who kept engaging in incest with her even after she gave birth to her 4th child.
So this is really hard to comprehend for the average person.
It really is, and that's why I feel like this is enough. This is part 1. These 2 serial killers, these 2 people met up, became serial killers, and
we know it's
didn't know about birth control.
And the fact that, you're married, you're having sex with your husband, you're having sex with clients, and you're having sex with your parent.
And your husband is encouraging you to do so. Okay, people. Thanks for listening, man. This is a doozy, I know. So we will
come back with part 2.
You will come back with part 2, and thank you all for listening. Gotta love you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks again so much for joining us, everyone. Be sure to stay connected with us on social media at both Instagram and Facebook. Our Instagram is
Heroes Zeros Podcast,
and Facebook
Heroes and Zeros, a true crime podcast. And you can listen to our podcast episodes or support or donate money to us. And you can send us your stories and just a lot more at our website, which is
Heroes and Zeros TrueCrime.com. Again, that's Heroes and Zeros TrueCrime.com. And you can email us also at heroes to zeros and more. That's the number 2, heroes to zeros and more at gmail.com.
Exactly. And you can also support us at our Patreon site now, which is
patreon.com/heroes zeros.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.